And you are all very welcome to this masterclass for NYC, for the National Speakers Association in NYC chapter. My name is Owen Fitzpatrick, and I'm today joined by a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, but someone who has taught me a lot over the years. She is one of the most phenomenal trainers I've ever seen in the corporate space. She is someone who I started working with many years ago. She'll probably mention in how we met. But I want to read out her bio because no matter how I gush about her, it's not going to do her justice. I'll quickly read through her bio and we'll get straight into it. This particular session is going to be all around corporate training and taking keynotes and how we convert them into corporate trainings, how we're able to manage that, what the differences are, the differences between coaching, consulting, training, and speaking. Also negotiating in terms of prices. All of that is what I'm hoping to cover with Margaret. And as I said, she's a massive amount of value to add in this space. So in terms of a bio, I'll get through it really quickly and then we will settle in. As most of you know, what I always try to do is make sure that we hear mainly from Margaret, because she is the person that will be adding the majority of value as well. So let's get in. And at the end, we'll also have time for Q&A as well, as we always do. So make sure, stick your questions in the chat or just wait. And then at the end, I'll open it up and we can all ask Margaret whatever questions we have. But just to get into terms of her bio, Margaret is the CEO of Equita Group, and a vastly experienced management consultant who's worked with some of the major companies in Ireland and Europe, assisted them into management development, negotiations, leadership training, coaching, mediation, and HR. She's extensive experience in the public and private sector. She's the author of 6 books, textbooks on psychology and work, communication, management theory and practice, and strategic HRM. Her latest book is on bullying and harassment, and she's currently writing a book on strategic negotiations. She's regarded as a leading expert in negotiation and executive education. She was head of executive education in terms of negotiation and in a business school here, the most prestigious business school in Ireland for a few years. She's an international keynote speaker, highly qualified expert in leadership with over 25 experience in corporate governance, business development, operational effectiveness, and strategy formulation, president of the MII and the South Dublin Chamber of Commerce, and strategic advisor to many organizations. I want to add a couple of things to that. Margaret is very much a lot of experience, number of qualifications with regards to Harvard Business School. She'll tell you a bit more about the Harvard situation or reference there. But one of the things she's done is she's partaken and consulted with organizations on billion-dollar negotiations. So she's been hired by organizations to come in as a key negotiator, helping them to be able to get to the very best possible scenario, the very best possible result or outcome as a result of that. So she's been hired as a consultant. She's been hired as a trainer. She's been hired as a speaker. She's been hired as a coach as well. She does a lot of executive coaching, but again, at a very senior level. She's worked internationally as well with a variety of different companies. And myself and Margaret, I've been lucky enough to work with her for the last number of years, on and off here or there, where I've hired her to come in working with me in various different areas like various different organizations I've worked with. She's hired me to come in and work with her. So we've known each other for years, but I've always seen her sort of as a mentor as well, one of the mentors to me in a lot of ways. So I don't want to keep gushing. I want to get straight into it. So Margaret, would welcome, first of all. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm really excited to get into the nuts and bolts of what we're going to be talking about. But I'd love, Margaret, if you can just give a little flavor to anything I've missed out or what you do on a day-to-day basis in your work, the kind of work that you do, and then we'll get into the questions if you don't mind, Margaret.
Of course. Well, it's very nice to meet you all. And of course, Owen has put me on such a plinth that all I can do is fall off now. But I suppose what I have done with my business, which I set up 20 years ago, was I made sure that I had a portfolio of work, that I had income coming in all the time. And we have a boutique consultancy, and we have advised the Prince of Abu Dhabi when he was setting up Abu Dhabi as a brand and how it should be positioned in the marketplace, for a tiny little Irish consultancy firm, right up to being the Harvard point on negotiation global ambassador here in Ireland. So I was the holder of the Harvard program here through Maynooth University. So day to day, we do 4 things. And I actually like the mix. I like the mix because it gives me balance and it also gives me different revenue streams. So we consult, which we write strategies for organizations, well-being, leadership. We're writing 2 government strategies at the moment, and I'm doing 2 merger and acquisition strategies for large-scale companies in the US, actually. We mediate complex disputes. So I am currently the government's non-executive director on the public pay talks. So I'm basically governing the overseeing of a task force that's set up to give out 150 million to doctors, nurses, firemen, whatever. And then day to day, I am training. So this morning, myself and the team, we were all in different places in the world working this morning. And I was in Singapore at 4 a.m. teaching. So it's the end of a very long day already, and there's more to come for me yet this evening. And then, and the training is our bread and butter. I mean, we're in a knowledge environment, guys. People are hungry for your insight, for your wisdom, but it needs to be in bite-sized, manageable pieces. So really what I would say is that as experts, we turn complex into simplex. That's what I do. I make it so that anybody can use it pretty quickly and easily. And in that, having it interpreted by somebody who knows it really well means that they just get it rapidly. So that's what I do every day.
Great. Thanks, Margaret. So let's start off with the high level question, and that is, put a frame for us, right? We got speaking, we got training, we got consulting, we got coaching. Could you give us the way you think about those 4, right? Because I have a perspective on those 4 myself. I'd love to hear your way of breaking it down, and also how do they relate to each other, so that we as speakers can start to look at it and be able to understand, well, how do we relate them as opposed to just understanding the definitions?
Yeah. So to me, I would go to a speaker who I wanted to hear their insight, some wisdom that they've got that I just want to revel in their mindset for an hour or 2, but I may not be able to do it. So for me, a speaker is somebody who lays out a beautiful banquet of knowledge, information, whatever's in their head, that they lay it out for somebody. And it's to inspire, really. It's really to help people to know more or to be inspired. When I move into training, then I've got to be able to do something with it. So for me, I think there's a nugget. If you've got the acorns of wisdom in your keynotes, then I think it's very simple to turn that into high-end corporate training. And there is such a need for corporate training, particularly if you are a brand of having, like you own, of being known for something like charisma or influence, then to be able to hop on top of that. People will buy 3 things every day. I don't know if anybody wants to guess in the chat what they are. People will pay for 3 things every day in this knowledge environment, knowledge world, okay? They'll pay for quality or service. They'll pay for value or something new, and they will pay for risk mitigation, covering their ass, making sure you don't hang them out to dry. So you've got to have it from door open to door closed, right in from selling them the idea to having really, happy, engaged people at the end of it. So you can't hang them out. There can't be any problems. It's got to be a full sealed envelope deal. And everybody needs training. A lot of professionals need CPD training. Some are egotistical enough to want it with high named individuals. So, I mean, you can therefore charge more. And people that need training, and by the way, CPD, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be accredited in any program. Some of our programs are accredited, most are not. People do not want long accredited programs anymore. That's what I have found. What they want is practical things that they can use day to day in a nugget in their life, that it's plug and play. Explained to them by the source, the expert. Coaching is around helping somebody to grow, so it's molding, but there's an element of which your time. CPD is a continuous professional development. So most professionals have a mandatory need. Lawyers, accountants, engineers, they all have to have a certain amount of hours a week. So you can plug into that. It's a marketplace that they have to pay for it. And they can't practice, they can't continue their license without it. Any profession has to have it, medics, doctors, whatever. The coaching is around helping somebody to grow. The challenge with coaching is it's time intensive, unless you try to do it virtually, one-to-many, like the likes of Dean Graziosi or Tony Robbins or something. And that's a sales machine. That is literally a big engine that is driving that. And they're making mini coaches. So that's what they're doing. They're not selling to the consumer. They're making mini coaches. And then for consulting is around advice. So consulting is risky because people will pay a lot for it, but if you get the wrong advice, you lose the gig.
So with that, Margaret, just on consulting, just for a moment, because I want to expect, because a lot of times what happens, at least for me, is people will ask me for, let's say, coaching, what they really want consulting. They'll ask for consulting, what they really want is training. And so just to get specific on it is, oftentimes you hear about the big four in consulting, and what they tend to do is they tend to, it's the whole joke is, you hire them, pay them lots of money, they come in and tell you, the problem you already knew that you had, right? And they give you like documentation after documentation to prove that you have that point. Sometimes they'll propose solutions, sometimes necessarily they'll stay at kind of a vague level. But the consulting where you actually get real results, you're going in there, you have to understand the client's backdrop. So if we understand the relationship between these, and again, I'm just going to throw out some ideas, and I'd love to hear what your way of thinking. Coaching is something that you could do at a group level, right? And you could do it at a leadership team, which is really great. You can do it individually, right the way through the organization to help that individual achieve their goals or solve their problems. That could be part of an overall training program as well, right? Because again, you can create a training designed to help people. You take your keynote, which is, to your point, inspirational and the core idea. You transfer or convert that into a training. That training could incorporate elements of coaching. So would it be fair to say then a consulting is sort of at the highest level possible in terms of you're helping them to figure out what problems they actually have, helping them figure out what they need, and then what they need will more than likely go into the training and the coaching bucket. And then speaking is almost you positioning yourself as a thought leader across the board. Or let's say if the problem is something that the entire organization struggles with, then the keynote speech is something that you present to 1,500, 2,000, 10,000 people in the organization worldwide. You put it out there that way. Am I seeing it in a...
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So the keynote will ignite the concept in the business. And the difference then, I think, where the training piece comes in, it's around the doing. So the keynote is around the knowledge. We know stuff that we don't do. So if what you want with the training is that they know how to do it. What I would say with the consulting is that I never go in to consult. I go in to have a conversation with the client to see where their opportunities or challenges lie. It's almost a discovery session. And then when I know what they're looking for, then I figure out what to sell them. And it often starts with multiple approaches. So in other words, it might start with the board where we look at writing a strategy for them, very practical thing, doing facilitated workshops, including one-to-one coaching, psychometrics, helping them become more self-aware, have 3 outcomes that they want, better decision-making, better autonomy, and the leader being able to move off and do a merger and acquisition, something you can prove you've done fairly quickly. Then we bring the next level of the business up. So basically what you do is you treat it like a wedding cake, and you make sure that you're giving different training throughout the organization. And you might have, for example, your keynote popping in at each one of those to inspire and connect. Now, you need to be able to transfer that because you can't do it all yourself. So for if each of you guys there, if you're, yourself and 2 researchers or whatever, you need to be able to lean into supports. There are a huge amount of supports, from concierge services to help you make this look snazzy, from marketing to, have websites. I have a website for almost every key product we've got now. So I stopped selling time 5 years ago, and I started selling value. So when we found a product that worked, we made it a product. We made it something that you would commercialize. So now people don't buy me, they buy the product. They buy Pace or Ascend or Aspire. So we've given our training a name.
So it's not just then a case of positioning yourself, let's say, for example, for anyone listening, as a keynote speaker. It's also about going, look, I'll help you find a solution, and that solution will involve speaking and coaching potentially and training. But ultimately speaking, this is the vision. This is where you're going. And because you're having higher level conversations, it's also a lot more lucrative. It's not just wham bam, here's a hour-long keynote. This is, I don't just want to inspire you. I want to help your organization transform.
Well, the point is, the keynote you'll get paid how much for? Even if you're marvelous, if you're Michael Porter, you'll get 45 grand an hour maybe. If you're lucky, that's not going to feed you for very long. And you've got all the other 39 hours of the week to work in. If you can make your knowledge work for you while you're not there, that's the secret.
And so on that, first of all, could I ask everybody in the chat, could you put in the topic you talk about? You don't have to go into too much depth, but just give us the topic, just so that as Margaret talks through, she can use those topics and give examples with those, because we want to make this as relevant as possible as a masterclass. So could you stick into the chat what's the topic you speak on? And again, if you speak on 100 topics, just pick one, the one that you tend to speak on the most, if you could. So we have, let me see, this is great. So we have collaboration, says Jean, continuous professional development. Oh, sorry, yeah, that's just clarification. Mike says mental health. Thanks, Mike. Anne says, I speak about career creation, create your own career adventure. Brilliant. Ruth says, expand diversity to be fully inclusive. Brilliant, Ruth. Thank you. Ken says, the future of work, building a more human workplace. Excellent, Ken. Thanks. Robin says, leadership communication. Thanks, Robin. Janet says, women's empowerment. Thanks, Janet. Mike says, creating great leadership teams. Brilliant. Thanks, Mike. Tony says, education. Brilliant. And Jen says, navigating change, work-life balance. And John says, train the trainers. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, John. So it just gives, so that we have that kind of thing. Because I want to ask you this question, Margaret, leaning straight in. Let's say you've got a keynote, and if you can give an example on one of the ones mentioned there, you've got a keynote on something around those. Could you talk us through, if you were doing a keynote on a topic that you were passionate about, but you didn't have a training, what would be the first few steps that you would take to transform that keynote into a full-on corporate training that could solve problems for an organization?
Okay, I'll do it using one of your speaker's concepts, if that's okay. I'll do Ruth. Is that okay with you, Ruth? So forgive me if I'm teaching you how to suck eggs now, because this may be, okay. So, so the first thing I would do with that, I would understand, so D&I is a huge topic, okay? But we all know that training on D&I doesn't work. That's what the research shows. Now, so that's not good for business. So now what you've got to do is you've got to make a training that works. So here's what I would and have done in relation to this. So what I did was I designed a program on diversity and inclusion specific for a client who wanted to run out a global D&I initiative. I built it in 5 blocks. So it's a masterclass in 3 blocks, and then they have pre-work and post-work and e-learning. So let me explain that. So what I did was I decided that this company needed to culturally improve their D&I footprint. They had done a survey 2 years beforehand, and the inclusivity scores were horrendous across the globe. Okay, so 2 years later, they still had the problem, and I was in a conversation with them in a meeting about something else, and I said, I can do that for you. Okay. And at no cost, said, let me have a look at it. And I put a proposal together for you. And Owen, with your crew later on, I'm very happy to send you some files that you can send to them to show them what I've done. Is that okay?
Great.
I may not be organized enough to put them in the chat today, but I might just have to desensitize the branding off them for the client, and then I'll send them to you. So what I did was I designed a 3-step program. So I did, what is D&I? Okay, because actually, believe it or not, most people don't know the difference. Okay, so diversity is around difference, and inclusion is around belonging. They're actually a dichotomy. They're polar opposites. So we like same and familiar. So therefore, anything that's different becomes a challenge. And yet in inclusion, we want belonging. So in fact, there's some brilliant research around how it should be not D and I, but D-I, okay, because they're kind of different. So then I looked at a design where we said, okay, let's write a playbook for the client in advance. A playbook is, here's how we do it. So I wrote a playbook for the client that over 4 months that says, here's who we are and here's how we want our D&I to be. And so that is theirs and they own it. It goes out in front of the program, so they have it as pre-work. I then did a lexicon to explain all the terms of D&I. I can probably put that as a sample in the chat, both of those in the chat feed before we finish up. And they then become the pre-work for the program. So now the company, I am writing for them the way they want to do things. They're culturally owning it. And then they come to a masterclass. The masterclass is 4 hours long. It runs around the global clock. That's where I was doing in Singapore this morning. And part 1 of the masterclass is very briefly explaining what D&I is, because they've pre-done it. And then I put them into 2 breakout rooms. They're using mural boards, so it's nice and engaging. And they're looking at some of the challenges for their company in the next 5 years through a D&I lens. And then a few minutes later in the breakout rooms, they're solving the same challenges. They're putting them on a template, and those templates are going to go in PDF format into the playbook in the future. So everybody will see their input in the playbook. So the playbook is lived, because it's about belonging. Now, how do I know I belong? I actually see myself in the way we do things here. And that playbook becomes live every quarter. There's a new one every quarter. So I had to design it in the start, write it, but actually, and I have a marketing company that I have on retainer that does that for me, makes it look snazzy. And then that's live for them. Okay, so in other words, everybody sees themselves in it. The second piece is looking at cultural intelligence, and we've done a partnership with the agent in Ireland for the Harvard CCI program initiative. So that's a psychometric that looks at cultural values and the 4 areas of cultural intelligence. So we bought a license for that. We trained on it over the summer, 3 of us, and we teach that piece in the middle. They get their own individual report, which they're looking at, and then they do some mural activity, moving things around to show where they are as a group. So each group is an intact group in the company, so they get to see where that they are as a group, and they get a group report once there's over 10 people, so they can look at areas where they've got weaknesses. Now that's very rich data for them. And then last but not least, we look at unconscious biases as the final part. We look at what they are and how to overcome them, and then we look at using CQ, or cultural intelligence, to disrupt them. And we do all that in 4 hours. After that, we send them some follow-up. So we send them a link with 7 videos on it around to continue their learning in D&I. And we send them 2 articles, one around diversity in the workplace and the role of females and gender. And then we send them a recent Harvard article just produced this year around the rhythm of diversity and inclusion. And I might be able to put that in the chat for you now as well.
So Margaret, just to interrupt, sorry to interrupt, but I just want a couple of things. First of all, can you clarify what you mean by mural boards?
Yeah, so mural is a product, a technological product that you can draw and play in breakout rooms or on Zoom or Teams. Okay. So effectively, it's like, I don't know.
Like a shared whiteboard? A shared whiteboard?
No, it's more fancy than that. So mural is a product, a bit like Zoom is a product. Yeah. And so what it is you have, you can set up like templates. So let's say if you were doing, I don't know, leadership, if you're doing the situational leadership, or if you were doing the 5 phases of communication, you can set up your activities in like posters and blocks. And then they come onto that room and they move them around. So they're working live with technology. It's brilliant for Gen X or any generation, actually, because instead of being static in breakout rooms or talking or using whiteboards that they have to screen grab and snap, this is alive. And it's a free product, or it's not free. It's free if you have an academic license. And if not, it's $30 a year or something.
Wow. Well, Mike in the chat, one of our board members as well. He's also said mural is great. He's been using it for 1.5 years. So that's great. So just one other thing, Margaret, because I want to keep extracting it out, because I'm sure, sometimes when we get into the weeds and stuff, whereas Ruth will be very much, au fait with everything you're saying there. For the likes of, let's say, for example, we've got other things like, train the trainers or education or leadership or empowerment. For that, if we take the same notion, you've got a keynote speech, and your keynote speech is about, let's say diversity and inclusivity, yeah. Right? And in that, what you might do is, in that keynote, it could be that potential conflict between those 2 words, to your point, right? So why it needs to be both, and why it's not about this, it's not about them 2 always fitting together perfectly, that actually and that might be your core idea. So the speech itself is the core idea that you then extrapolate from stories, examples, whatnot, to bring it down. Now, with the training, we're going deeper into that. So can we just stay at the process level of how did you, in your brain, Margaret, how do you go from that's the core idea of the message into these are the 4 areas? So first, we want to define it, explain what diversity is, explain what inclusivity is. Second, we want to go to cultural intelligence, because this is, let's say, the overall granular solution that we're talking about, the academic solution that is practical application. Then we go into the hidden biases, which is again, the other problem that is there. Like, is it that you just go, okay, well, we need to define it, that's it. But then we go, what's the solution? The solution is cultural intelligence, let's just say. And the other solution is recognizing our natural hidden biases, our unconscious biases. And we need to tackle those 2. So one module will explain everything, set the context. The second module will do the cultural intelligence solution. And the third will challenge the assumptions and biases. And then, all the follow-up videos, the online virtual stuff will reinforce, as will the PDFs, will reinforce the overall understanding from the program. Am I getting it right? Like, could you?
Yeah. So Yeah. So basically, when I have an idea or a problem that a client has, believe it or not, I go quite manual and granular with my design thinking first. I get a big A3 art pad and a packet of colored markers, and I start drawing boxes or post-its and move them around and say, what should this look like? So we'll always have, when it's training, it'll always be fed with some kind of a concept. It'll be a topic or a concept. It'll then have some key learnings or key ideas or your nuggets or your acorns, as I call them. Acorns need to grow into great oaks. They don't do well on their own. Okay. They're just stuck in a box. Your great thinking in your brain is dead unless you can get it out to grow it into great oaks. So one of the ways to get it out into great oaks is to put it into training that can be delivered by many others. Okay, that you own the copyright, that you own the design, that you own the methodology, that you set it up, but that you can then fold and play and give it to others to use. Okay, in a way that works, and you can still have an element of it. So if you think of it, what you'd have is what are the core things that they need to know of this? So let's say if we were talking about collaboration or mental health, you'd be saying, so what is collaboration? What's the research that says the collaboration is great? What's my model of collaboration? Okay, it's not the Thomas and Kilman model or whatever. What's my model of collaboration? How do I do it? So if your audience is executives, why do they need a collaboration? What are the 3 things that they need, or the 5 things that they need, or the 4 things? Make it into something that they can remember. Model. The world is visual. Make it into something that, it has 3 or 4 steps to it. So you need to give them some insight. So I'm going to use 5 eyes now. Okay, you need to give them some insight. Collaboration is imperative for business success of the future. As the world becomes more complex, as globalization is becoming more paramount, the need to work together, even across industries and across sectors, across value chains, is becoming the new norm. And here's why, your reason why. Okay, and then you'd say, here, so that's your insight. Insight is, oh my God, there is something that I didn't know. Okay. Initiatives are, what are you going to do about it? Here's the 4 things you need to do about it, the 3 things you need to do about it. So if we go back to D&I, you need to build a global footprint. 2, you need to have training that works. 3, you need to have informed, educated cultural ambassadors. So that's why the psychometric is there, because it's measurable. And 4, you need to raise your number on your D&I survey in 2 years' time. Okay, now then they know that it works. Okay, it's results based. Who are you influencing is the next I. Who is it aimed at? Whether it's the stakeholders, the audience, so you need to target your communication. And I know you're going to ask me about how I write proposals. I write very sexy proposals, very graphic, very pithy, very short, but very imagery. I can sometimes get a proposal for 250 grand on 1 page, maybe 6 at a max. Okay, and then so make sure that it's aimed at your audience. I custom write every proposal because that's where you're going to win it or lose it. And then it's an hour once you have some templates. It's an hour. And then so the initiatives, the influence, and then the impact. What's the business case of it? What will it do? Tell them what you can do that somebody else can't do. And then do it with integrity. So that's the 5th I. So believe it. And know that it works and be confident. And they're buying you, so make sure that you deliver you and everything that is you in this. So in other words, when you look back in 3 years' time and you say, yeah, it did what it said on the tin. What I sold them, it worked.
So just to give back those 5 for you then, number 1 is the insight, the core insight. That would be like the keynote speech. This is the main insight of how things change. So for example, if you look at Patrick Lacconi, his insight is there's 5 dysfunctions that teams have that stop them from doing good work, right? And that's the core thing. Then the initiatives these are the 5, whatever it is, 5 behaviors, I think it's called, of what we can do about this in order for us to move forward.
How do you master trust? How do you master conflict in teams?
So and again, Stephen Covey, these are the 7 habits that we need to cultivate or whatever. So that's the initiatives. Then the influence is how you present that in an influential way. So that the proposal, the people you're trying to influence for it is, am I getting that?
Yeah, target it to whatever audience you're at the moment.
Sure.
Okay? So in other words, nuance it to the audience.
And then impact is the power of what you can do for them. You're painting a granular vision of how exciting the future will be when you're in their life, or when your methodology is in their life, when they're applying the methodology.
And the most important 2 words you used in that is for them.
For them.
Not what you can do. It's what you can do for them.
Sure.
Because what you can do is a given. It's what you can do for them that needs to be proven.
Perfect. And then integrity is, of course, ensuring that you truly fully believe it. You're 100% convinced in everything that you're offering or promising or suggesting in that sense. So to bring it back to where, and that's really great. I love that framework, Margaret, and it's really helpful. So what you have is you have the insight, and then you're bringing, and as you're building it with your big sort of, huge, your Post-it notes and your markers and all that sort of stuff, you're planning out the 3 or 4 different elements to training this to people, right?
Design is everything when you have to be quicker. And we do have to be snappier now. We can't labor around for a day trying to teach someone something for 8 hours. You might get 2 hours if you're on Zoom, 4 hours if you're in front of them. You might only get 40 minutes. Design thinking is really important here now. The effort now goes into the designing it.
And how do you know the difference between what to put in the live sessions versus what to tag on, in terms of the video follow-ups?
Yeah. So basically what I do is I entice them with what I send them beforehand, and I give them basic stuff that I don't want to waste my time talking through. So like information, things they can read. So in D&I, it's like the definitions of it, what it is, some of the, the 3 big case studies on it. But when they come to the masterclass, what I want them is, this is where they come to wisdom. This is where they come to interrogate, to ask. They know it, and now they get to, robustly argue with it. They get to apply it. So the masterclass should always be practice-based. So if you're in executive education, that's one thing. If you are in corporate training, it's all around application. If I'm the CFO of a company and I want to know how to communicate more effectively with stakeholders across the globe, and I am going to either Tony to do it, or I'm going to Robin to do it, okay, then what do I need to know? What do I need to know? And they will do it each differently. What do I need to know from them? And in that, then in your masterclass there, it's got to be engaging. You got to bring them in early. It's non-egotistical, as I would call it. So your keynote can be egotistical, but now it's humanist. It's around what you do for them.
And so with that, then, just so I'm clear, and by the way, congratulations, Ruth, you just did a TEDx. So fantastic. Congratulations on that. That's wonderful. So in that, then, you have the pre-work, and the pre-work is to get them excited, case studies, information, loosely set in the context. When you get the core module in there, obviously that's the time they get to interact with each other. That's the time where they get a massive amount of value. So you've got to structure or build or design exercises. What kind of, what's your thinking process around, okay, so I got this concept. Let's say it's Stephen Covey's Be Proactive. How do you know which exercises to build for that? How do you know which exercise to build for, cultural intelligence or overcoming biases? What is your thought process that leads you to, this is the core idea they need to get? You need to be culturally intelligent. These are the elements of cultural intelligence. Now, how do you build the exercise that gets them to do that?
So for me, it's all around industry context. So you need to know the industry you're working in, and you need to have master case studies that you can edit for engineering or for pharma. And so basically you customize them in order that they're relevant for them. Now, I'm Harvard trained, so I use a lot of Harvard case studies. I pay for those, and that's fine. But I've written hundreds of case studies over the years, and I buy other case studies that, say, for example, on leadership, I might use the very old BBC Online to show different types of leadership. So you can buy ones, or you might use blockchain around, a case study on blockchain around data transfer and stuff like that. So you can buy all of these tools, should you want to use them, but you need to know what the client is looking for. So let's say, for example, Owen, we were doing a training on leadership. Okay, so I would make sure that they knew what leadership was and how it was different from management. I would look at what my take on leadership, if I have, one of your keynotes, and if they were talking about, if it was Robin, for example, and the way a leader communicates. Okay, then I talk about the traits of leadership. I talk about the styles of leadership. Then I talk about some of the models of leadership. I might do their situational leadership psychometric to make sure that they knew what their style was, so they can bring themselves into the room. We then look at the challenges of that. We'd look at maybe a case study to apply 3 of those. So say looking at leadership styles, I take 3 or 4 leaders videos from across the world, show them and ask them to analyze them, and ask them then, where they compare to that. And in relation to just coming back to the case study piece, what I would, it's a bit of work to figure out what's the relevant case study. And I would have maybe 600 case studies at my disposal and constantly buying others depending on new clients. So for example, with the biases case study, when I trained with CCI this year, I bought case studies off them that I can use, and I have the right to edit them.
And so with regards to these different things, so I just want to again bring it back a little bit, because I love what you're saying. I just want to keep it on the thing. So we've got case studies is one type of exercise. Analyzing a video and reporting what did you notice about that video is another exercise that you could do. Psychometric tests, so giving them a short test, which I've seen you do, and getting them to do that is another particular exercise that you could do. You could also, I suppose, get them to set sort of targets, or one that I would use a lot is how specifically can you apply this in your, it's very simple, but how can you apply this in your day-to-day work? So if it's, for example, Cialdini's principle of reciprocity, so that's basically, if I do something for you, you're more likely to give back to me. How can I specifically use that in my next sales conversation if you're teaching sales? Or if it's, some exercise around building trust. Once again, in the team conversations we have at our board meeting, what is one thing you can do to be able to execute on that behavior that builds trust in that sense? What other exercise types are there besides the case study, the video analysis, the application to everyday life, the psychometric testing? There's got to be a few more.
Sure. And I was going to say, sorry, just you'd be surprised when you start to think like this now, how you'll notice things that work, that you see lots of opportunities. So for example, Camilla Harris's acceptance speech is an absolutely rock star solid speech around what followers are looking for. So if you look at what followers want, the research on what followers want, community, sense of purpose, leader, it's actually, she does all of it. Okay, so now that you know some of the things that you want to teach, you can actually, you'll find things that you're not even aware of become really good examples of it. First of all, I think that some other toolkits that you can do if you're in a room, there's lots of exercises. There's lots of things you can buy from training, things like pulley ropes and stuff, jigsaws for making creative thinking, marshmallows and strings, but we can't do any of that on Zoom. So now we have to be much more creative and shorter. One of the things I forgot to say earlier is actually that everybody is now looking for the quick and down and dirty. So they want an infographic on the day, on your masterclass. What is it? They want it in one page and maybe with, a toolkit on the back. So in fact, you've got to synthesize it in your design, synthesize it to give it to them. And then you deliver it slightly wider and you pull it back in again. The other type of things that you can use is you can also, I often sometimes have people say, if we're looking at communication or presentation skills or something like that, I'd ask them to make a video on WhatsApp or Slack or Yammer and send them to me in advance, and we'd offer to analyze them. And we'd offer to analyze them on a framework. So we take, content, tonality, whatever, and we would give them 6 pieces of advice before they'd come into the program at all.
And when you do the case studies, some of them are like solving this problem. So this is the problem. Some of them are based upon real situations. When I attended Harvard Business School, the strategic negotiation program, and they would give all real life examples of actual things that happen. But I noticed with you also do certain case studies that haven't actually happened, but are putting people in a position where they've got a problem and they've got to solve that problem.
Yeah, so oftentimes if I'm working on with a client over a time period, you'll know some of the challenges that they got. So there's clients that I'm working with at the minute, and they have an accountability problem. People are not owning up to, the bigger the company gets, it's a very large technological company. And what they're finding is they're hiring the best in the world. They're being paid huge amounts. They're being very well looked after, but actually they're not really owning up to the entrepreneurship piece and the accountability. And what they're finding is that the mergers and acquisitions they're doing, their leaders that are coming in from those routes are growing faster than their own people. Maybe you might wonder why, because they're too softened and too cared for, perhaps, in the greenhouse of the corporate company where nobody ever says no. And then they wonder why, these people aren't hungry and, demanding to get to the top. So now they're trying to build accountability into those. So what I would do then was I would write simple, 2-paragraph case studies that are relevant to their industry, facing them with the challenge where they have only, say, 3 options out of it. and they'd have to role play it with somebody else who was the opposite one, who's arguing with them in relation to it. Okay. And then what I'd do is I'd have a model to debrief it on, or I'd have some framework for them to plug it into to see what was good, average, poor, or great. And then I'd say, okay, nobody ever gets it right first time. So now what do we do better the next time? And then I'd show them the tool again.
Now, one thing that also we've done together, and I've seen you do, is when you give an exercise, sometimes people revert back to their normal, like for example, negotiation. People revert back to the normal way they always do things instead of applying what you just taught them, right? And so what are the things you need to look out for? Like, how do you ensure that people are going to apply the concepts you've just taught them and not just act as if this exercise is an alien to the rest of the workshop?
Yeah. Well, I think you need to what I do is I keep it simple. I give them a framework to work to. So in other words, there might be a 4-box model that they have to fill in while they're in it or after it, so that they almost have to go around the clock to do the 4 things. I remind them to stay in role. I tell them that they have full autonomy in this role, depending on how senior they are. So whatever the case study is, I say, you're not you, and you stay with the role. Okay. And then afterwards, I would say to them, okay, what did you individually benefit and contribute there? What did your team benefit and contribute there, and what did the organization? And what you find is they might have only focused at one level. And I forgot to say that earlier, by the way. When I'm writing a proposal, no matter who I'm writing it to, I show them what the individuals will get, what the teams will get, and what the organization will get. I look at it at 3 levels, because most organizations need that meso level. It's not we need our leaders to be better communicators. We need our organization to be sharper communicator, have bigger impact and presence in our global footprint, of our company across the world. So in fact, I always make sure I hit the 3 levels.
So walk me through then. Let's get into proposals for a second, if you don't mind, Margaret. Walk me through, how do you design your proposals? Like you said, they're sometimes a couple of pages or whatever. What do you have in a business proposal for a training? And again, you don't do, I'll do 2 days training on influence. You're like, I'm going to bring you through a year-long program. So when you're proposing that, what goes into a proposal?
So I'll have done a discovery session with them to know what they're looking for. So I already have their buzzwords in my head. So in the starting page, I'll have a good image on the front. It'll be customized for them. Their logo will be on it, and it'll look snappy. The second page will always be the need. So here's what you need. So it's all about them. They're up front. The third page is a kind of very nice graphics of me and the company and what we do and our brands we work with. And they're just PDFs that I just copy into every proposal. So that page 3 is kind of a standard. Okay. And then I have the design basically after that. And I usually try and break it into 3 or 4 areas. So it's kind of chunked into 2 pages, so the pre-work or the e-learning element. And we have a full e-learning suite. I only developed this last year, by the way. Very easy to do. It's a bit of donkey work, but you don't have to do it all yourself. There's companies who can do it for you, okay, once you know what you want. So I would have the piece around the autonomous learner. So we treat people as adults. Here's the piece they can do at their own time, at their own pace, their own way, okay? And when I'm dealing with seniors, we don't put any tests on it. So it's not like, here's the 7 steps of Covey and you have to go through step 1 before you can go step through and you must get 70%. No. We treat people as adults, and we say, this is for your continuous development. You'll have a sign-on and you'll own this portal yourself. We'll put their logos and everything on it so it looks really good. We have a concierge service that wraps around that, and we put images of that in where they get text reminders and email reminders. Now, I know this sounds complicated to you guys if you're sitting there and you haven't done any of this. It's literally $9,000 a year or something I pay for that. Okay.
And so just, excuse me, sorry. In that, this is really, really great. And I love the structure of it. So we got page 1, the fancy, nice thing with their logo and a nice curated image for them. The page 2, their needs. Page 3, what we do.
Who we are and why we're a credible source.
Okay. Where do you have the team described, and where do you have the style? Like, for example, a lot of times, in my experience, when corporates ask for training, they want to know, so what do you do? Is it just lecture? Is it how interactive? Like, it's the same stuff. So when you put in your value proposition, what makes Equita different, and you give the various different people in Equita, where do you put that in your proposal, or do you?
Oh, I do. So the team is usually after the content, okay, because we're not more important than them. So I'll put who's ever going to be delivered on it in a sort of bibliographies in the back. And I'll often put, say if I had you in it, I'd put a YouTube link of one of your TEDx talk, for example, in there that they can click into it.
Okay.
So we have a biog of each of our people, what their, their core expertise is, and we pull the people that are only going to be working on that program. And then we'll show the back office admin support we have with Megan, Alyssa, Jack, whoever are going to be handling it, and they'll be our governance team. And we'll say these are at your, your beck and call sort of 24 hours a day. I go back to the design piece. So I'll have the pre-piece, then I'll have the live piece, and that could be 10 sessions or it could be one session, whatever it is. And then I'll have the follow-up piece. And then we'll show what the total value of all this is. So we'll have a table at the back that basically says for all of this, including design work, articles, case studies, e-learning portals, live master classes with experts or whatever, post-work articles, follow-up, and accountability sessions, or sometimes on long programs we would have where we'd have a lunch and learn, where we, first Monday of every month, we have, our Madness Mondays, and anyone that's doing a 10-month program, say if it was Workday, we'll have them in at 12 o'clock. If it's Coonanagle, we'll have them in at 2 o'clock. And we literally just have well, how are you getting on, guys? What's happening? How are you using this? Where are you hitting a stumbling block? And we just have live sessions where we answer ordinary questions. They're saying, oh, look, I tried to develop my people plan. It's not working. My people are all over the globe. I can't get them. They're in different time zones. What can I do? And they have real life problems that we just keep them pushed on with. So they always feel they have a live connection to a human.
And that brings in the coaching part to it. So part of it is group coaching, right?
And then, but also what we'll say, for example, when we start something, we might say to them, look, each of these need to be developed. They need one-on-one, they need mentoring, or they need coaching. And then what we'll do is we'll put a package for each person together. So we'll say, if we want us to coach one person, and here's the 6 coaches that will be working with them, but they'll have one, whoever it is, for consistency. And this is your fee. If you want 30 done, this is the fee, and we give discount for 30.
And so without getting into, specifics in terms of financials, how do you go about pricing this? What do you do in order for you to price it? Because again, you described a journey that you took, which is also a journey that I've been on. I'm sure a number of people on this call have been on, whereby initially you're charging, at least for training, per day. And I still do that in some areas of my business, but I've also moved wherever I can to this overall longer term play, whereby over the course of the next year, this is the program that we're going to run. And this is so you're positioning it differently. How should we think about price, number one? And then I'm going to ask you to draw into your negotiation superpower to talk about some of their elements around that.
Well, I would say that we largely underestimate our own value, even when you start to dream big. So never sell your time, sell your value. So look at what it's going to do for them, and then price accordingly. So what I would say is that try putting a 0 on it and then figure out why you should ever take it off.
I love that strategy. Try to put a 0 on it. If you haven't heard, that's a brilliant one. Think about what it's worth, stick a 0 on it, and then see whether or not you can take it out. That's brilliant, Margaret.
Will I give a real life example of where I got it wrong? I mean, I'm telling you this after 20 years of experience of getting it really wrong at times, okay? Yeah. So I did a program for a company which was a Fit for Future program. It's one of our products. It's really good. It's at a board level, and it is we ask a question of the business. So the business sets the question. And it has 2 things in it. It'll have an axiom, which is a turning point, and a result. And it always starts with the words on the road. So on the road to improved profitable growth, or to 16 billion, or whatever they want to get to, through customer centricity, or through value chain integration, or through leadership development, or through diversity and inclusion enhancement, whatever, where are we? Okay. And they'll say, so that's a scale of 1 to 100. So the business asks the question. Okay. And in the first session, we have a strategy day, which is all very tactile. And they get to answer that question. And I have a 10-page template that I have ready, and I have an administrator comes with me, and they just type up all the information as it's gathered. And it's funny enough, at the end of the day or the day later, they have a strategy that's PDF'd and nice graphics and photographs of them doing it. And that's day 1 of our strategy day. Second day, so that's best choices. So it's Fit for Future, and that's day 1, and best choices. Second day is best of me. So they do a leadership psychometric beforehand. They get a couple of hours of coaching, so they know who they are based on that. And then they come to a day on leadership and best of me. So these are broken out, and they're usually away days with the dinner overnight. And then the third day is Better Together, which is teamwork, and we'll profile their team. So we'll do Belbin or Talent Q, and we'll look at their team profile, see where their gaps are and see where their challenges are. And then the last piece is around culture and change and driving the agenda and what they need to do that. Okay. They do lots of little case studies, short case studies in it within that, just that are applied to the business. And the first time I did it, when I typed it up, when I priced it up, it came out at about 17,000 that I should have been, or was it 12,500, sorry, that I should have been charging for this at my daily rate, okay, at the time. It's a good few years ago. It worked. It saved that company 750,000 in the first year, okay? And they grew exponentially. They grew something like 22%. So they made money and they saved money. So the next time I priced it, I charged 45,000 for it. And the time after that I priced it, I charged 75,000 for it, and nobody said no.
There you go. That's the kind of increase in prices we all want. And again,
one thing on, sorry, I had a relevant customer as a case study. Do you follow me? I had someone that was clear to say, if you look, there's a guy on LinkedIn that says I'm world class. He was the client that case study was built through. Do you follow that piece of work was on? I had one client that was willing to say, you've got to do this.
And okay, so let's get a bit granular, if you don't mind, just about the wording of this. So you're pitching an idea to people, right? And you don't want to price yourselves out of the market. So you're making a proposal, but look, when I talk to other speakers and trainers and stuff, and I know it's been a concern for me more and more so in the past, but it's how do you phrase it? How do you frame the price to avoid A, undercutting yourself, and B, pricing yourselves out? So if you went in there for that 12,500, and you actually asked for 75 up front, maybe it doesn't work so well. So what is it how would you communicate that, Margaret, either verbally or through your proposal or thing? And how would you leave any room for negotiate? Like, how would you do that? How do you negotiate around price with companies to maximize the amount you can get, but at the same time, not say no to a very valuable opportunity?
Yeah. So great question. So first of all, I think I'm not in the selling game. I'm in the service provision game. Okay. So I'm not selling products or service. I'm selling results. And I go in very confident that I'm doing that. So when I go in for it, is like I just came from a session with a client just before this, and they're looking for 3 programs, okay, that they want. They've gone into an existing client, gone into a new company, and he wants 3 programs, okay? And he said to me, just make sure the price is manageable, okay? So he left it entirely to me. So what I will be doing with that is so he doesn't have a budget, but he knows my previous pricing. And what he's saying is don't go overboard. I would always, always, always say to the client first, have you a budget? Because you might not be in the right market. Okay. Like there's guys in my business own and yours that'll do a day's training for 500 quid with a pulley bag. Well, I couldn't run my business on that. My break-even point is more than that. I run a business.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to be in every market. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And nobody wants anybody that's as brilliant as all as you that's hungry. So even if you are, you can be hungry for success, but not hungry for a gig, because nobody wants anybody that's needy. Okay. So you need to be a little bit exclusive, but human. Like I'm not saying I'm any expert in anything, but I have great clients that I treat very well. I go on holidays with one client every year. I rent a house from another client. I embed myself in their lives, okay? And they're embedded in mine. But there's a trust built on that. And it's a trust based on results. I didn't do that in the first year with them, but in the 6th or 7th year, I'm doing that. They invite me on a ski trip and I go. I bring all my kids, we all go, okay? And they then don't question my pricing, if that makes sense, because they know I give value. But now, here's the thing on, they could call me at 11 o'clock at night and I will answer the phone. Me, not my team, I will answer the phone. Yeah. Because we sell on service and results, okay? So we take our time to get it right.
And you're not, just to clear, you're saying that's right for you, because I'm sure there's 2 times, and I know, Margaret, because me and you have had conversations at midnight and all sorts of stuff where we've emailed, we've had Zoom calls or whatever. But there's people there that have like a strong sense of work-life balance, which is great, and that's important. What you're saying is that, again, factor in the fact that you are, if you're available at all times, then again, it's furthermore part of your brand, as in, this is one of the reasons why. Because, for example, I have a couple of people that work for me, and one of them, I can contact them any time of the day or night. Obviously, I don't. I'm not going to, 3 o'clock in the morning. Can you update me website, please? but it's I can contact them like at any time and they'll respond pretty quick. And to me, that's worth it. That's worth more. So their per hour for me, what I'm hiring them, is worth more to me than somebody else who does the same amount of hours but is at a fixed place. So so I just wanted to clarify that, because I think sometimes people think, you might be saying, well, you should always be available, and of course not.
No, That's just what I'm saying is, what makes you unique
Sure.
to your client base? Okay, you don't need 1,000 clients. You just need ones that pay what you need to pay you. Okay, so I decided earlier that I don't like worrying about money. So I try and get my clients on retainer. So I have 4 clients on retainer that pay me 100 grand a year. That stops me worrying.
And so with the retainer, how do you set up that kind of?
Ken's laughing at me there. But so in the first instance, you have to prove yourself to them. So I did a piece of work for them where I did a Fit for Future program and a Breakthrough Global. So I'll tell you what it was. It was a US corporate company who have an Irish division here. And there was going to be a change of guard. So the CEO was going to be leaving. He had founded the company, sold it out again, and was still running it, and it has now been taken over by an American corporation. He was going to be exiting stage left, yes, it is, Anne, but there's a lot of value in it. I do a lot of work for it, I promise. I don't get 100 grand to do nothing. But what he wanted to do is he wanted to make sure that he had capability built up in the business before, international or global, put somebody else in to run Ireland. Okay. So, he had a long-standing goal. So my job was to equip all of his team to be better leaders. They needed to have results on the global trust score that proved that they were doing it. So it wasn't just they think it. And so I developed 3 programs for them, Fit for Future, Breakthrough Global, and I ran groups through these, okay? And then I did a mentoring program for them where I trained the board, the CEO and his team to mentor 2 people each every year, okay? So we did a mentoring program. So that was what happened in the first year. It went really well. They did the same the following year, and except they didn't need the Fit for Future. And by year 3, at one stage, a senior person left, okay? And immediately, within 1 minute, they had somebody in the post because they had 3 people ready to take over. That's when he was able to prove to the US, not only were the trust scores right, but that he had taken a long-sighted game. Do you follow? That he wasn't going to be able to build capability. Most of you can't write a book in an hour. It might take a year. It might take a day, 10 days, 10 years. Okay. You can't do an MBA in a day, right? So it takes time to do these things. So for me then, what I had built up with them was a degree of trust. And now I run a number of initiatives. I look at what their corporate strategy is for the next year, for 2022. We look at what they need. Okay. And then I change it around. So you're working with that company this year, actually, okay, in the Leading Forward program. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing less of the delivery, but they're getting different value.
And so with that in mind, and Jean just put something into the chat, which I think is important. And you have a team, right? So once upon a time, Margaret, you didn't have a team. I have a small team, part-time mainly, but you have a bigger team, full-time and stuff. So I'd just like you to speak a little bit to that, because I think that's an important part. By the way, just to let everyone know, not only does Margaret have a team, but I work really hard. I'm be called a workaholic by different friends, and I'm trying to cure myself of that. I'm trying to take more time off. Margaret's worse than me. So sorry for dumping you in, Margaret, but she works harder than anyone else I've ever seen. And I'm not even exaggerating. Well, there's one person that's probably similar level, but the 2 of them are, insane, in terms of work. At the same time, she'll also get a lot of other stuff done. So, miraculously, other parts of her life, she's amazing relationships. The reason I bring that up is because I don't want it to seem like we're just saying, oh, here you go. All you need to do is 1, 2, and 3, and it's all fine. So, Margaret, to the point, or to the question I'm trying to ask is, what would your advice or suggestions or recommendations be for anyone who's starting out, who's a 1-person show, who has a keynote speech, and they want to start building trainings? In order, what would be, if you were in that position today, knowing what you know now, what would be step 1, step 2, step 3 to move towards building not just a speaking business, but a training business that becomes lucrative to the point that 5 years from now, you can be starting looking for retainers? What would be your first few steps?
So first of all, synthesize your key idea into something, a model. 5 easy steps. Make it so that a 7-year-old can understand it. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing I would say is stop trying to do everything yourself. Okay, I had to learn that a long time ago. I do work long and hard. I'm very passionate about what I do. You know, I'm a bit of a warrior. I'm a bit of a survivor. You know, I have a big, long journey behind me to get me to where I am today. And I'm very proud of where I am today. But I work to support my family. And I have 2 children with special needs, and I have one with a critical illness. So, you know, I need to work, to be perfectly honest. And I also employ 8 staff. That's all. It's a team of 8. Okay. So, and the rest are associates. So, and they get paid their daily rate. Nobody books training at the last minute. So you have lots of time to plan it out. Okay. So synthesize your thinking. Get a standard proposal ready so you're ready to answer things fairly quickly. Just have a couple of pages that you just have to put a few bits and pieces in. Take the time to make it look executive-y. When it hits, you really want it to have something when it passes them by on their desk to say, gosh, couldn't do without that here today. I mean, one of the things I love is a friend of mine, Valerie Pierce, and she has one program called Clear and Critical Thinking. I mean, who's going to see a program called Clear and Critical Thinking and say, we don't need that here today? Okay, make it something that their mind is going, yeah, okay. And then, you know, be willing to put the footwork in to do the meetings. So if they don't know you, they're going to want to get to know you. So you might have to do a few socialization calls on Zoom. Be clear where they're going. So spend your time first asking them what they're looking for before you tell them what you can do. Okay, because then if you know where they're at, you know, we're doing great on D and on diversity, but very poor on inclusion. Now you know where to ramp up. Then get you know, a couple of decks ready that are good, interesting, snazzy, well built, so that you could train in a flash. So if they say to you, can you give me 15 minutes on communication or D&I, that you have something that is conceptual that you can show them. Okay, if you're not used to using PowerPoint, there's a really good resource that you can get called UExec, YOUEXEC. Millions of PowerPoints of every format, every business model you want, every business plan, every value chain. It's either free or €50 a year or something. And they have book synopses and lots of things on it. Okay, phenomenal videos on how to use it. Okay. So that's a really good model to get some fancy PowerPoints really quickly, and then just stick your own branding on it. I have a marketing company only in the last 2 years because I just found I was spending a lot of time doing design work, and I have them on a small retainer, €1,500 a month or something like that. It's tiny for the amount of value I get out of it. And you know, for now, with one client, one of those is on retainer. Just recently I wrote a playbook for the CEO for her first 100 days. And I mean, they did the bulk of the writing. I just made it look pretty and came up with the idea. And then we're doing a colleague resource playbook. So 52 weeks of the year, we're saying this is how we play. And I've done an interview with 52 colleagues, and that's going to be in the playbook. And every year we do the same thing. So that's a way of them highlighting in something that's very fancy that can go to their clients, that looks like, you know, here's how we rock. Culturally, this is what we do. So there's ways to make things easy, I suppose. Okay. So get a proposal, get a deck, and then get some resources, you know, video links, articles, case studies, a few bits that just reinforce what you want to teach or train, or write your own. I mean, they don't have to be big anymore, Owen. You're not looking for a 15-page Harvard case study with analysis. What you're really looking for is something that's relevant and right now.
And so when do you know how do you know when to get your first staff member, and who would your first staff member be if you were starting off from scratch today?
Well, I would say don't get staff unless you need it, really, because it's a high-end cost. I would outsource everything, okay, as much as possible. And that model works for you very well, and it worked for me for years. So I would keep your costs low, okay, as much as possible. I mean, I'm very happy to have a one-on-one with any of you after this at a time that suits you, where I can look at what you're actually doing, and anything I have, you're welcome to. So if I have anything that you can use and make your own, that's my gift to you. You do the same for someone else when the tables are turned. Okay. If you succeed, I'm happy. You know, there's plenty in this world for all of us. I don't do anything that's unique. I'm not new under the sun. Okay. But if I have anything, I'm more than happy to have a quick phone call with each. Go be generous. That's what I would say. I am generous. It's who I am to a fault. So I am being me. And I would say, you be you, whatever you are. Do you follow me? If you're humble, if you're gregarious, Be yourself, but with skill and style. But if you can take what you do and translate it, you've got to believe that you've got the gift to give what you've got to everybody, and then not be shy about selling it. I'm an extrovert, but I actually hate selling. I haven't got one salesperson in my business. Would you believe that? Not one.
And I think that's and I know this for a fact because obviously I'm very familiar. If you ever, I've been in on calls with Margaret when she, let's say, communicates, and it's very like it's an educational experience for me, because what happens is that she's very confident in the way she puts things across, makes strong declarations, but at the same time, there's always the relationship there. That's the piece that I think. And I want to go back to something because I haven't still gotten a specific answer on something that I asked earlier. But before I get to that, I just want to touch on the delegate piece, because I still want to get an answer to that. So let's say, for example, you're starting off and you decide you're not going to hire anyone, right? But who are the people that you would source out? You've mentioned the marketing company to make your proposals look snazzy, to make your slide deck look beautiful. Who are the other people you get? What are the core tasks that you're going to outsource if you're starting from scratch and you've done this standard proposal? You've let's say you've got your marketing people to make it snazzy. You've got your meetings, your discovery meetings. What are the things that you would do to start getting?
Yeah. Well, you need to find someone who's good at the things you're not good at, because you can't lapse on anything. So, for example, if you're not good on administrative things or finances or dealing with the tax man or revenue, I always make sure that there's always someone to deal with that, because they frighten me when they come near me, the tax men kind of people. So I find someone who handles that for me. Okay, they just tell me what I need to pay, and I need a timeline of when it needs to be paid. So I would think you need an administrative assistant. Virtual is perfectly fine. And it doesn't have to be full time. So, for example, if you're writing a book and you're typing everything yourself, you might want a proofer, or an edit, and you'd have your editor, and they would do that. But if you're building training, you might want someone who has an understanding of L&D to basically remind you to do things and to do the donkey work. So, for example, if you have a training coming up on the 5th of February, that on the 1st of February, or sorry, the 21st of January, they send out the pre-work that you have. They send out the Zoom links. So the mundane stuff that you don't need to have time to be doing. So you need to look at maximizing your time. So, if you can pay someone $30 an hour to do something like that for you 4 days a week or 4 mornings a week, whatever. And that's if you're working full time. That's all you need. What you want to find is you're not Molly Mop trying to do everything, and working all day and then coming home all night and trying to do admin. And then what happens is something goes out sloppy. You send the wrong thing to the wrong client, or you leave another client's name in something. Okay. So I would just say, don't do anything that you're not great at, and find a way to get basic things ready. So in other words, get organized. So if you've got a program on influencing and a program on leadership and a program on communication, have 3 folders. Have it built out, have a timed outline for the day so you never forget it. Have your notes that you've written afterwards after you've delivered it of how to make it better. Update it, okay? And keep that live. So I always have a spreadsheet of what's on for the whole year, month by month. And then I have a 1 page for every program behind that. That 1 page tells me who's the client, what date's it on, who's booked for it, a control sheet effectively. What's the Zoom link for it? How many attendees? What's the fee? What date's the pre-work due? What date's the post-work due?
Do you
have someone else to do?
Do you have a CRM system?
No.
Wow. So you do the whole CRM system yourself?
We have lately, but we're only using it, a concierge service, which I'd highly recommend. There's one called Coursco, COURSECO.
Okay.
And I'm happy to put a kind of a Ready Reckoner page together for everybody on this with all these links things I'm talking about. But I'm sure there's other companies than Coursco that you could use. But we have a big program running out now for about 6,000 people for a client over the next 3 years. There's no way we're going to be sending emails to 6,000 people. So now we've invested in a concierge service. I think that's about €9,000, but it's like an LMS system. But it has a CMS system on top of it. So effectively what it does is you set up a campaign for, Joe Blogs Incorporated. And let's say they've got 6 programs running. You set up program 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you fill in the participants. So you have to do that at the start. And after that, let's say they're doing 10 modules, it sends them out everything. It says, here's your Zoom link, Here's the email reminder. Here's the text to your phone the day before to turn up. Here's the link with your here's the link with your pre-work, and here's the your post-work. So it does it automatically. It's there. It's all on it.
Brilliant. So
the LMS can be there too. You can actually put your live videos and your talk to slides on LMS. Yeah.
All right. So that's really.
And buy Zoom Pro.
Zoom Pro, yeah. I think we've a sort of a deal in the NSA, the national thing, where we get Zoom at a much cheaper price than normal. I at least have that record, so I'm pretty sure. Why do you suggest Zoom Pro, by the way?
Well, because you can teach for as long as you want, so you get more than 45 minutes. 2, it has got enhanced features such as breakout rooms that you can name. So like, let's say if you're doing a breakout room and you can have, this is the, Leoncone's 1, trust, 2, conflict, 3, you can name that. And 3, you can live teach on Zoom with yourself in it, with your slides in the background.
Okay, cool. All right. So
in advance, I might do a little clip on that and send it to you. So when you go hit in Zoom Pro, when you go hit share screen, okay, because you're the host, I won't be able to do it. It'll come up with a couple of tiles. Just above the tiles, it'll say basic and advanced. Yeah. If you click advanced, if you want to do it, if you click advanced and bring up a slide deck, you can actually, it puts you into it. You can live teach. So you don't have to be worried about doing voiceovers on your slides. You can talk to your own slides.
Great, love it. So Zoom said
that's great as pre-work. That's great as pre-work, and it's also great as short e-learning pieces.
Right. So we have Ken, the Zoom Enterprise license through NSA is an amazing bargain for sure. It is, Ken, 100% agree. Ruth and Anne both say how generous you are, Margaret. I will third that. Jean says it's work to manage and communicate with a team. Any suggestions around?
Yeah, I would say keep it tight. Okay, make sure they know your purpose. Make sure they know your style. Is that okay? And the onus is on you to be clear. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but I asked somebody a while ago to do something, and it was really something simple, like pull our proposal on influencing together and put this client's logo on it and price it at whatever, $3,000 for the session. Okay. And they came back and said to me, do you want that in PowerPoint, Word, or Excel? Our template for proposals is in Word. I didn't think I needed to be that explicit. Okay. But you forget that people don't know what you know. So really, I'd say keep it really simple. And you know too much. You don't need to tell your client all you know. They've got to pay for more. What you've got to do is really hook them into the need for this. Is that okay? Go on.
Sorry, just on that, do you create process documents where you have, look, these are all the different tasks we need to engage in? Like, so for example, when you have a client, or you don't do any of that?
No, look, we run a small business, and I'm a programmer by first profession. I was the world's worst. Couldn't write a fucking program to save my life. Okay. Yeah. But that's what I studied in the 80s. I then studied accountancy. I still don't understand the lodgement side of banking. I still prefer the withdrawal side of it. Okay. And then I went on to do lots of degrees and 4 other masters. But each of those gave me something. So what I need to know is the framework for not failing. So I keep it very simple. So I don't like to worry. So all I have is I have very good, simple Excel reporting. For accounting, I use QuickBooks, very simple. It's minimal license and everything, even your receipts are scanned in. So you don't even have to worry. Everything is really simple once it's set up, tiny to run. And 2, in terms of business reporting, I literally just use Excel spreadsheets and control sheets behind it. Keep it very simple.
Great. And I'm going to come back to that final question, which I still haven't got. So when I asked you about how would you linguistically present the price, you told me about, when you've got a good enough relationship, you don't have to worry about that factor. What if it's a brand new client, they've heard about you for someone and you're in the proposal? Then how do you present it verbally to them or through text?
So I tell them who I'm in the meeting with them. So I basically explain to them, here's my product, here's our service, here's the value it gives, and here's the time period, because if it's 1 hour or 10 weeks makes a whole big difference. And then I say our fee for a fully encompassed service, and that is, it's paid a third up front. They don't often buy that, by the way, because you need to get POs. And then we split it throughout. Or else if it's over a year, I say, and that can be broken into 10 monthly installments, but we don't start until we have a PO.
But is there not a concern they'll say, no, it's too much? Or
Well,
can they?
well, if it's too much, maybe you're not in the right market. And I mean, our prices aren't extreme. It might sound like it when you say 100 grand, but my aim was to have 10 clients paying 100 grand, whether they pay it on retainer or, through pieces of work.
Yeah.
Okay? And,
So you don't give them big, massive discounts or anything like that?
no, they have to earn discounts. That's negotiation. They have to earn discounts. So, like, why would you take a couple of $100 out of your pocket and give it to me there now, please? Why would you? You might as well imagine burning it. If you believe it's worth it and you can prove it. So you need to be able to back into the data. There's no point saying 45 grand. And they say, well, what's that for? Okay.
Yeah,
and I'd say for access to an LMS system, it's for content that's 2021 relevant. It is customized to your industry. Your logos are going to be plastered all over it. Your people can access this whenever they like. We're going to be available once a month in order to sense check it with them. To come to us. We're going to have 10 masterclasses or 5 masterclasses. You're going to be with a world-renowned expert, and then there's going to be relevant articles, case studies, and applied working. So, and I'm going to guarantee you that your people will all say it was excellent.
Right.
Man to a child, they will all say it was excellent.
I love it. And I know from experience as well, when you talk about a program, I get excited about it. Whenever Margaret talks about me, she makes me sound way better than I am. And I'm always like buzzing off the conversation thinking, you know what, actually, I'm pretty good. It only lasts for 10 minutes, but still, it's nice.
But you have to be passionate about what you do. Like, I honestly believe that when I go in to talk to these people that I can do this for them. I've walked away from work because I think I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't keep well-being, by the way, for obvious reasons.
So just normally I'll kind of try to summarize. Best of luck with me on that. I will be taking the core notes from this session. I'm going to have to watch it again, to be honest, because there's so much. But in a nutshell, we talked initially, before I open it up to questions, please get your questions ready. I know there's one in the chat, and we'll ask you to unmute in a second, Ruth. Just to summarize where we went to, we looked at corporate training. We looked at the difference between coaching, consulting, training, and speaking. Speaking being the core idea, you put in your insight, inspiring people, training being building the skills, training people to be able to actually do the things. Coaching's one-to-one or sometimes group, where you're helping them to solve their own individual problems or helping them to achieve their goals, moving them forward. And then consulting is helping them to identify what problems they have and helping them to solve it. And again, when you go in, you're looking at the 5 sort of I's that Margaret mentioned: the insight. So what's the core idea, which would be more speaking, the initiatives, which is like getting into the training, the 7 steps, the 3 keys, the 4 elements. Then there's the influence, presenting that in a compelling manner for a proposal. There's the impact. What can you do for them? The for them being important, as Margaret mentioned. And then integrity, doing it all in a way that you truly believe in what you're doing. You truly believe in the importance. We got a bit granular into the different examples that Margaret gave, and we looked at, how do you build a training? And Margaret said pre-work, then we go into coursework, like the masterclass itself. Then we go to the post-work, which is PDFs and some follow-up reading material, as well as a virtual component as well. And then we got into the actual core work. What does that look like? The pre-work excites them and stuff like that. But the core work gets into maybe the 4 elements, the 4 keys. Generally, the start, set the context, define it. Then we identify the solution, which is, whatever the main elements or main skills are that they need to be able to learn. Then we got into the exercises. And again, from an exercise point of view, what we need to be able to do is give them something, either a case study or analysis discussion of a video, or, analysis discussion of how they're going to apply those skills moving forward. And giving them those breakout sessions that allow them to be able to apply as much of it as they can to the various scenarios they find themselves in. We talked about building proposals, which is, again, the steps of that would be on step 1, you have a nice fancy cover with a relevant image with their logo on it. The step 2 would be the sort of their needs, what's important to them. Then the 3rd page will be what it is that you do for them and all that sort of structure. Then we have the next page after that, the design of the program, what you're suggesting, again, with the pre-work, the post-work, the core modules and stuff like that. And then we have the team at the end, where you're sort of mentioning it, and the table of the price. Once again, layering it all up, no longer doing it per day, but giving them an overall sense of how this big program works and how it might function for them. Negotiating wise on price, it's again, add a 0 to whatever you're going to charge, and then fight to see why you should take that down. Again, obviously. Which exactly, you argue as to why you should do it. You fight with yourself on that so that you recognize your value and whatnot in that area. And then in terms of building the actual company, it's about reaching out. It's about finding the people that, what are the tasks that, other people can do better for you. But as Margaret said, if she started out today, she would get the sort of the first piece done. She would get the synthesizer model into whatever steps, build a standard proposal for it, get the foot in the door in terms of meetings and discovery calls with people, and then to be able to build and prepare a deck and resources. And then she would hire people to do admin work, hire marketing to make it look design, hire people to take care of the finances and all that sort of stuff, and get them doing that so that you can continuously build. I'm sure that I've missed a lot of stuff there, Margaret, but I will go back over and I will do it. In the meantime, I want to just say, Jen said, I don't think I've stopped typing or taking a breath since I logged in. Thank you, Margaret, for so much incredible value. Ruth says, Margaret, answer my question about VA. Brilliant. Thanks, Ruth. Anne says, Jen, I've taken 6 pages of notes. Great stuff, says Mike. Ken says, Margaret, thank you for your insights. Mike, summarizing, thank you. Thank you, Margaret, says Mike Vini. I appreciate your insights and generosity. Ruth says, amazing, overwhelming, and energizing. Our president, Jean, says, yes, Mike, so true. Margaret says, my pleasure. Robin says, Rio, don't even see him typing. Rewatch this for sure. Her head is spinning. So without thing, I would love to, someone let me know who has a question. Anne, can you take a photograph of us and we can smile? I'm going to keep my face very still because most of the time the photographs of me are always end up bad. But anybody who's got a question? Jean has a question. Great, Jean.
First of all, Margaret, thank you. Absolutely amazing. I will echo every single thing every other person is saying. And in the mother front, I'm aligned with you on many, many ways. So I'm extra impacted by you. My biggest question is, as you head into 2022, which for so many of us is brand new in a lot of ways that feel good, where have you had to reinvent yourself as you plan for 2022 that surprised you, that you didn't really plan for, but where have you had to reinvent?
Yeah. So in 2021, I had to reinvent with the whole online piece and going on to Zoom. And I mean, I was on airplanes flying around to New Zealand, Hong Kong, Singapore, and suddenly had to sit at my desk. And actually what I realized was I enjoy that more. I now don't have to leave my living room to make money. It's amazing. I have 3 offices just because I have buildings in 3 different places, all leased, but I'm hardly in them. And I trust my people. They're all now able to work from home. I think 2022, the challenge for me will be around choices, scale or not. So, and I think I like boutique, to be perfectly honest. I do suffer, I might not sound it, but I do suffer a little bit from limiting beliefs, the same as everybody else. And I have a tight team now, and I'm really afraid nearly to take the next step and grow that, because actually I never wanted to be a company brand name on a building. We give very personal service, but if somebody else bought my company, I think they would turn it into something entirely more fluid, something that would grow more rapidly and would be just something in a box. And I think I'm facing that challenge. And I'm also facing the challenge where my big clients are starting to eat out the time for my little clients who've looked after me very well. Okay, the guys who are with me 20 years and give me $175 an hour. And, they only want 10 hours a year, but I always find the time for them because I like them. And I think that's going to be very difficult to hold on to moving forward.
I think just to add to that, because myself and yourself, Margaret, like at the beginning of, and I'm sure many of you will relate to this, at the beginning of lockdown, I obviously didn't know that many people in the NSA, but in the beginning of lockdown, 85% of my business was gone out the door because I was flying 100 flights a year. All of a sudden, most of it's gone. And I remember reaching out, myself and Margaret. Margaret, you were in a similar position in terms of, it was a lot of cancellations. But I remember the 2 of us were talking and we were sharing, and it's like what NSA is. It's the opportunity to share some of the shared struggles we're going through, the worries, the concerns. And like, I remember the 2 of us trying to figure out the virtual sessions. This is March 2020, and how that's come around. So now, we've managed to, I suppose, overcome that. And now actually it's the best thing in the world. Not that, I don't want to get out the door and do some live sessions or whatnot, but it's amazing how back then in that first conversation me and you had, Margaret, how things have transformed and how we figured it out. And I believe that's a message for all of us, is that we can figure it out. It doesn't matter what happens tomorrow. It doesn't matter if it's a recession. It doesn't matter if it's COVID. It doesn't matter what it is, because at the end of the day, as speakers or trainers or thought leaders or coaches or experts, we have ideas that can make a difference to people's lives. And when you really understand that, and as Margaret mentioned earlier, you value that and you hold that as something that can do it, then to me, there's always going to be a massive need. The only question is if we're learning as much as we can, putting ourselves out there as much as we can. So I did want to mention that, Margaret, because I do remember the two of us on Zoom, talking to ourselves and looking into how does this all work and blah, blah, blah. And to have come as far as we have, even in the last year and a half.
I had 272 days cancelled, and we don't charge cancellation fees. And that's a purposeful decision, because we trust our clients. It always comes back, and it always does. Two things I didn't mention, I think, which is really important, and Gina, might go to your question. I always make a plan. I can change it 100 times, but I make a plan. And my plan for 2021 was to have 10 clients paying 100,000. Didn't matter where, it was 8 clients paying 100,000. And my plan for 2020 is to have 10 clients paying 100,000. So how it comes or where it comes, it doesn't matter. And I stay open to new ideas all the time. And I stay close to my clients. So I always know where they're going. I read into their strategies. I know where their corporate business is going. I talk their language. If they've got a strategy called Next Gen or Focus on Excellence, I'm talking that in my presentation. I'm talking to them in a language that they know. So it's not about me. I'm a butler. I serve them, if that makes sense. You might be something entirely different. I'm not a big name like you guys. So we make things happen behind the scenes, and we don't take the credit. But we're their right hand. They need us, and we run the whole house, is the way we look at it.
Love it. Thanks a million for that, Margaret. Thanks for the question, Jean. So we'll do one more question. Anybody got a question that they want to ask? Okay. All right. Well, I want to say a huge thank you, Margaret, on behalf of the NSA NYC chapter. Please, if you can, let Margaret know what you felt in the chat, so I can read out that. Honestly, it's been wonderful as always. I always knew whenever we get a chance to talk, I always love our conversations. I feel very lucky to know you. I regard you as a very dear friend, not just an incredible trainer and speaker and a mentor. So thank you so much for joining us. A big thank you from Jean, exactly what Jean needed to hear. Brilliant. Fantastic session, says Ken. Mike, thanks very much. Margaret. Ruth, thank you, Margaret. Jeanette, thank you, Margaret. Really need the replay to get it off for sure. Great advice and so real, says Jean. You are what you say you are, exactly. Photo, you may have to do it. My internet's poor, no problem. Could everyone make a big smile on the count of 3? Anne, have you got your photo? Oh,
I need more hair.
There we go. 1, 2, 3. I like actually having control because it means that I'm not caught out with some weird face for it. Thanks very much. Thanks, Kathy. Kathy said, thanks, great advice. Everyone, we're going to have JJ Peterson on in December talking about marketing. And we've got exciting speakers coming up, which I'll announce soon for 2022. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I'll make sure that there's a PDF with like a brief summary of what Margaret said. But thanks a million, everyone, for taking the time. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, everybody. And may the force be with you. Margaret, thank you so much.
And I meant my offer of doing a one-on-one with anybody if they want one.
Great. I'll make sure Margaret's email address is in the notes as well. So
bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Owen.